Carlson Takeoff 2011, just being released today, and we're going to be looking at some of the new features in the program. My name is Todd Carlson. I'm the product manager for Carlson Takeoff and Construction. I'm joined here today with John O'Brien.
Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming.
John is our regional sales manager for both New England and the Mid-Atlantic region. And once we get through the main presentation, feel free to type in questions on the right on the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. Just briefly on Takeoff, our product Takeoff, posts a survey, civil, and data collection, and all the other products that we have. Takeoff is designed for contractors to create surface models, DTM, digital terrain models, for the purpose of cut-fill estimating, material trenching and strata quantities, data prep for the field for doing layout or machine control. Works with Carlson machine control, Topcon, Leica, Trimble. And you have the ability in our software to work from paper plans, digitizing, or with digital plans, either in PDF form or in a CAD DWG. And we also have the ability to work with MicroStation DGN files. We also have a product called Carlson Construction. It comes in a lower price than Carlson Takeoff, and it has everything that Takeoff has except for doing the material trenching and strata quantities, and it doesn't do paper digitizing. It's more geared towards if you want to do basic cut-fill estimating and you're doing a lot of prepping for the field. This is a product that we've come out with just last year that's more affordably priced than Takeoff as an alternative. Looking at what we are going to take a look at today and our new release and how you could upgrade to that, there's a couple different options. If you're on Carlson Takeoff, any version 2004 to 2010, that's the module version that installs with either AutoCAD or IntelliCAD. You can upgrade to Carlson 2011, and that's something that is only hours away from being released today. Carlson Construction, which was first introduced last year, same thing, that's going to be available starting today. And Carlson R1 through R3, or T1 through T3. If you have any of those versions, that's the version that has the AutoCAD OEM engine built inside of it. We'll be coming out with a T4 release for and by the end of the year. So, what's new in Carlson Takeoff 2011? We have new tools for PDF import. It kind of, first of last year, for 2010, was the first time we were able to bring in PDF. We now have new commands that will allow you to be up and running with that PDF a lot faster in terms of scaling it and also putting line work to different layers and getting clean line work from that PDF. There's more options in trenching for both the reports and how you enter in a trench that we're going to be taking a look at. There's new features for 3D modeling, some things I'm pretty excited about that will allow you to create 3D line work a little bit easier. We've kind of tweaked a couple commands that we've had, and some really good stuff there. And there's new methods for strata modeling. So based off of drill hole information, how Takeoff processes that information, there's different options. And contact information, if you have any questions, you can give me a call or an email or John O'Brien here. Also, there's more information on our website, carlsonsw.com/takeoff. Okay. Without further ado, let's get into the software. Here's if I can see my desktop. Let me run programs, Carlson 2011, and I'm running this on the AutoCAD 2009 engine. And I'm going to say OK. And what we're going to look at first is a PDF file, bringing that in, and some of the new commands we have to support estimating from that PDF. So let's create a new drawing. And I'm going to say set name, and I'm just going to create a drawing in my folder on my desktop webinar, and I'll call it PDF. Okay. Horizontal scale 50. And just starting a new drawing that I'm going to now bring a PDF into. So under Tools, this is something that was new last year with the 2010 release, is under Import Export, we have Import PDF File. Select the PDF you want to load up. I have one here, CAD 2. Select Open and Import PDF File. So you have the option to basically explode this PDF into line work. It will come in as polylines. Insert as an image, so you can see it, but it's a BIP image. You can't actually grip any of the line work that you see. Or you could save it to that BIP image file. What's new for 2011 is use colors for layers. So when you get that PDF from an engineer or whoever you're getting it from, the program will be able to recognize if there's any grayscale. It's going to be able to recognize those colors in the PDF and put those out onto their own layers, a process that you don't have to do. With the last release, when you brought in a PDF, everything came in on the same layer 0. So now, whether it's in color, if it's red and blue, or if it's in a different grayscale, that PDF, we're now going to get layers from it. So I'm going to say Insert Line Work. Okay, and something else that's new is you see is saying processing pages 1 through 1, page 1. Before we had a limit of only working with a PDF that had 1 page. Now, if your PDF has 20 pages, you can select which page you want to process and which ones to ignore. And it can process multiple PDFs, and it will just stack them in your drawing. Instead of before, what you'd have to do is open up that PDF and save out a page to bring it in. So we now handle multiple pages on the PDF. Okay, so now I'm just following the command line here. Okay, pick point to insert PDF. Picking point in the left side of my drawing. Rotation angle, from bringing in this drawing before, I know it needs to be rotated 90 degrees. And specify scale, I'm not sure of the scale, so I'm going to hit Enter. Okay, and my PDF comes in. I can zoom in on it. And right away, I'll go to Drawing Inspector and go over this line work. And what I have checked for my Drawing Inspector is for it to show me any elevation in the line work, and its layer name. And if I go over here, you can see it's set this to a layer, and this is now on a different layer, black. This is based off of the grayscale. Before, these would all be on the same layer, 0.
Todd, I have a question.
Yes, John.
Let's say that we've got some people who are logged in who don't have the previous release and looking at us for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
They are now seeing that there's a third option to utilizing Takeoff to create cut and fills and so forth via digitizing, via digital file,
Mm-hmm.
and now PDF file. A lot of people have asked for PDF because engineers aren't really readily willing to give up a digital file.
Exactly.
And we're trying to get away from digitizing because we know that's not the most accurate way or time-consuming, needless to say, way of doing things. What's the benefit of the PDF format for those who are just signing up? Why would they ask, or how would they go about getting this particular file? And when they ask for the PDF file, what's the downside? Is the PDF more clean of a file than a digital, where you could have a lot of layers that are not meant to be used? They're just sitting there. Is it a clean file being a PDF file? And is it an easier option to start working with an engineer so they don't have to sit there and digitize everything?
Yeah, it's a good question, John. I think PDFs have become more and more universal as the deliverable that engineers are giving out. We would like them to send out more CAD files, because if you have the CAD file, then line work has layers and it has elevations, and it's a lot quicker to do estimating. If you can get the CAD file, engineers have been reluctant to do that. So PDFs have become more standard because they also don't want to plot it out, or they make you plot it out on a piece of paper. So by getting a PDF, it saves you from having to plot it out on paper. It saves you from having to digitize tracing in the line work, and it comes in, not as accurate as the CAD file, but we'll see on this example, it'll save me a lot of time having to digitize and trace really tedious work digitizing contour lines.
But that's based on the fact that we've got elevations in this file.
Not on this PDF. You're not getting any elevations. You'll never get an elevation from a PDF file.
Okay.
But it saves the time of having to trace over the line work. Because what we have in this drawing here is actual lines. Like, if I click on this line here, you can see little points highlight on it. I'm getting a line. I'm not having to retrace that line in, and this is a perfect square. I'm not having to trace that in by digitizing.
And we're picking up the layer it's on?
And we're giving it a layer, default layer.
Okay.
Yep. As you can see, I could isolate layers. Now, if I use the little palm tree, isolate, and I click on one of these layers, okay, I can see they're parsed out as contour lines because they're a different grayscale than the rest of the line work. Okay. So I can easily set those. So I can say set layer for existing. These look like existing contours. And I am just going to change one setting that we have in Takeoff first. And that is under Carlson Configure, Takeoff, SiteNet settings. We have an option here to automatically update the colors for the entities and assign them gray so that you can see what's elevated and what's not elevated. I'm going to check off that option because I'm working with gray line work here. So let me say okay to that. And now I'm just going to organize things into everything right now. All these layers that came in are under Other. I'm going to put some in Existing Design and leave some in Other. So set layer for existing.
Now, how did you know that was the existing Was that through drawing inspector or?
Yeah, just looking at the drawing, these contour lines look like existing contours. You know, they're not going through the building, and you know, it's just kind of a judgment call that I'm calling these existing contours.
Because obviously from that file we need to find out what the existing is and what the proposed is so we can get the differences.
Right.
So it's important we find which layers, which line works attributed to which file format, whether it's existing or proposed.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So I have some line work under existing now, and some line work under the design. Now, obviously, there's more cleanup to do, but that new feature in 2011 definitely helps you get started. And the more detailed the PDF might be, the more colors it has, the more useful that routine will be. Something else that's new is ability to process these dash lines and make them into solid contour lines. Let me just turn off my drawing inspector. Okay. So right now we have all these little segments, and really we want this to be a continuous contour line and eventually have elevation on it.
Now, when we change those segments to solid lines,
yep,
and we get rid of the blue bars, are we downsizing the file at the same time?
It would probably reduce the file size because we're going to have less points comprising the contour lines. That's something we can look at. But the new routine is under Import Export, and I'm going to say convert polylines to text. Or no, I'm not. I'm going to say convert dashes to polylines. That one's next. Okay, convert dashes to polylines. It asks me for a sample of the dash. So let's zoom in here. Select an adjacent dash line. This is so the program can approximate the gap between the line work, so it knows how to join it. And then it says what to process, and I'll type in all, enter. And now I get solid lines on a lot of that line work. Okay.
Now, are those grip panels considered vertices?
Yep, those are vertices on the polyline.
So we can now go into drawing cleanup and reduce this file even further,
yep,
so that if we happen to be wanting to take this all the way out to a machine control situation, we have faster, better results.
Right. Okay. Yep. So drawing cleanup would probably get rid of a lot of the points along this line segment here. You can see it's not perfect connecting all the dashes, but it's a long way opposed to having to do each one.
But according to the file, that is a solid line. We're just looking at a graphic array that just hasn't connected everything, or are they still segments?
So those are segments. Those are segments in the line. But by doing this convert, it saves me from having to digitize this line in here. Okay. And then we have different elevate commands that says elevate, assign contour lines, multiple in series. Say that these were 2-foot contours, and I'm just going to make up some numbers here, going through here to here. Say the first contour was at 100, going up in elevation. Okay, updated 7 polylines, and if I look at my 3D viewer window, okay, ignore 0 elevation. Let's see. Where's my one work here? can see those contours that now have elevation. Yep. And just seeing if I could show all the contours. So, I've begun the process now of elevating some of the line work in here, which is a step closer to making a model for the existing data. Another new routine that we have is ability to read text that's in the drawing and convert it into actual, well, this right here, they're just line work, not actually text. But we can now convert this line work into a text value. That command is under Import Export, Convert Polylines to Text. Okay, and what you need is a character file. So I'll just call this Test 2011, and what this will do is associate line work in the drawing and how it's positioned and oriented to actual text value. So what I need to do is say add, and I'm going to say, okay, I want to put a 9 into this library, character library. So I say okay, and I just want to do standard text for it. Okay, select objects. Here's my 9. So I'll highlight that, press enter. Now, anytime the program sees a 9 in here like that, it's going to put in a text value of 9. Let's add 7. With the standard text, this is what it's going to convert it to. Here's my text line, my 7. So I click that, it says select object, 1 found, enter. And add another, add a 3.
Now, does this become a library value, or is it something you have to repeat every time?
Yep. So this is a library where I can save this file and load it on the next job. So this can be a one-time setup, but if you're getting different text, a different PDF, the 7s and 3s might be shaped differently. So you would need to add those to this library or a new library. Okay, and I'm going to do add one more. Let's do 8. Standard, and I pick on that and enter. Okay, and once you build this library, I can say convert, and let's select this text here, enter. Okay, converted 9 text characters. Exit, save. Okay, and now I have text values for these instead of just lines. If I do edit text, and pick on this. Okay, now is this is the invert out. Okay, so I could add to this value, and I can use all the different text editing tools that we have, and also our elevation tool. So, yeah, if we were to process, say we had a lot of leader lines for a 3D line or a curve, we could convert all those leader lines into actual text and then run elevate 2D to 3D by that text. Whereas before, that line work would just be dead to us. So we now have the ability to work off of that line work in there and convert it in the drawing.
Now, is there a way of doing this globally?
Yep. So I just selected these 3 here because I didn't create numbers for everything in the drawing, but it's a selection. So so I selected those three. I could have typed in all, and it would have done all of them if I had all the characters created. Okay. One other helpful command now for the PDF is scaling it. The new scale that we have is under Edit, 2D Scale, and let me turn on the design right now. Okay, so yeah, right now in the drawing, if I do, the scale is off. Importing a PDF, your drawing is not going to be scaled accurately. And if I do an inquiry, standard distance, okay, and let's turn my O-snap on. So from 0 to 40, this should be 40 feet in the drawing. If I click here to here, and F2, okay, that distance is a little more than 2 feet. So obviously the scale is wrong in here. All my volumes would be way off. Just to get an idea, you know, this asphalt sidewalk here, if I ran that same command, standard distance, across here, it's saying that that sidewalk is less than half a foot wide. So obviously that's incorrect. We need to rescale this drawing in order to get accurate quantities on it.
Question.
Yep.
You'll probably most likely have to do this with every PDF file that comes in. We've seen that as we've worked with them. The question I have is, when you went in to scale the numbers or the elevations or whatever we had assigned on that particular PDF format, we added them to the library just now.
Yeah.
When you change the scale of this, does that affect what you've already brought into the library as far as any scaling concerning the elevations?
No, that shouldn't affect how it processes at 0. Yeah. Any of the characters, it should read that the same because the line work is all oriented the same. The scale should not matter on it.
All right, so there isn't. I guess what I want to point out is there's not a set sequence that we really should do, or is there a sequence that it's a better practice than others?
Yeah, in terms of workflow, you typically would scale the drawing first. You can bring in a PDF, maybe do a drawing cleanup on it, but one of your first steps should be to scale the PDF so all the line work you create is true. You're not doing that after the fact. Yeah, so this is a step I first brought it in that we could have done, but I got excited with the different layers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we're looking to scale this drawing. So the process now to scale, this is a lot simpler than it was before. It's just under Edit, 2D Scale. And now we have a dialog that comes up that kind of makes figuring out what the scale factor on the drawing is a lot easier. So what do you want to scale? The entire drawing or certain objects in the drawing? Just right in this PDF, so we want to scale everything. Use customize scale factor on this job. That's what we're going to do. But if I uncheck this, you can see some other scaling options that are going to be useful with other drawings. If you're bringing in a CAD file and say it was in inches, it was an architectural, and everything you do, you want to be working in US feet. You can see the scale factors grayed out, but it's 0.083333, repeating. So the program automatically knows those conversions and will scale the drawing accordingly. It's not something that you have to type into your calculator each time to figure out how to take a US feet drawing into metric. It will calculate that scale factor for you. On this job, there's no simple conversion for that. We want to use a customized scale factor. So I'm checking on that option. And scale factor right now, that's for US feet to metric, but I'm going to say screen pick. And it's going to say first point. So I'm going to click at the 0 to the 40. Okay. So we get that same result as the standard distance, saying the current distance between the two is 2.03. I tell the program I want that scale to be 40 and say done. Okay. And it gives me a scale factor, to 9 decimal places. Just for time purposes, I'm going to use the another scale. I'm just going to copy the scale and say cancel. The 2D scale can take a long time on drawing this complicated to convert it. So I'm just going to use the AutoCAD scale and use that factor. Okay, select objects, base point, and paste in that value. Okay, and hit enter. Zoom extend. Okay, here's the PDF now. And if I zoom back in here and I do inquiry, standard distance, go from 0 to 40. All right. F2, that distance is exactly 40 now. If I want to check the distance actually on the job, let's go back to our asphalt block. Standard distance again, going across here, F2. Now that's over 7.5 feet wide. Makes a lot more sense for a walk opposed to under half a foot. So we've now scaled this PDF accurately. That 2D scale is a lot quicker way to calculate that scaling factor. And now we'd be ready to go through, create more layers for this PDF of the existing design, and then elevate the PDF. So those are some of the new tools that we've created for working with PDF. The ability to change, to recognize the layers, the different colors in the drawing and put those out to layers, the ability to process text and dash polylines into continuous lines, and to scale the PDF in a simpler fashion. Okay. I'm going to open up a new drawing now. We're going to look at some of the new trenching features and also some of the new ways we take things from 2D to 3D. So I'm going to my desktop again, webinar, and demo 3, and opening this up. Okay, it's just our basic PDF trenching example, and I put some little buildings around the road here as well. Okay, so in trenching, some of the new options we have under trench, it's no longer input polyline trench line work. It's input trench line, and the reason for that, if I go to it, is instead of only having the option to process a polyline, which is very useful but doesn't work in every situation, we now have the ability to enter in points and have the program build the trench network off of those points. So on this example, I'm going to go by points. I'm going to have it prompt me for the invert in, and I'm going to leave the rest of the defaults as is. So you say OK. And it says pick trench starting point. So I could pick anywhere on the drawing. Get my OSAP on, so it's jumping to different points. But anywhere there's any indication of where that trench starts, you can freely pick on it now in this command instead of having to pick a line. I'm going to pick on the center of this point here, and I'm just going to left click. starting station 0, and down here on the bottom, it's going to be the same prompting as you're used to if you're entering in a polyline. So select text of the manhole ID. The invert in, this is my first one, so it's going to be the same as my invert out. And then the rim elevation. Okay? And now it says pick the next point. So I can pick any point here on the drawing, and I want to go to my next manhole here and left click. Okay? Select text for the manhole ID. Select that value. You can see right above here it's reading that value off of the text in the drawing. This is something that would also work with that new PDF. If we converted all this text from a PDF, this command would now be able to work with it. Invert in, the invert out, and the rim elevation. Okay. Pipe size between the two, I'm going to say 15, and pick the next point. All right, and I'm going to go here. Manhole ID 347. The invert in from, this is 367. So I click on 367, and the invert out, and the rim. Okay, and let's call this 24. Okay, pick next trench point. We'll do enter to end, and now it says another trench line. I'm going to say yes, and we have one more down here. And just pick this point. Starting station 0 on this as well. Manhole ID, the invert out and invert in, same. Rim elevation, and then I'm going to connect back up over here. Okay. And it's going to use those existing values. Pipe size, let's call this one 24 as well. Okay, select another one. No. All right, and now under trench, I can say draw a trench network in the plan view, and I can see how those are connected up. It gives me the linear footage between the two, or between all the manholes. And I'm going to say edit, trench structure. Something else that's new, if I click on one of these, okay, pipe material. So by default, they're in there as concrete, but I could change this to PCP. And say okay. That's something that we've added, and we'll look at a report where we could see that broken out. Okay. So, yeah, just added flexibility there, being able to do points instead of just line work. Some more things with the trench. If I do, let's see, a trench template now. Input edit trench template. This is something that's changed as well. Okay, so I'm just creating a new template file for the trench, open. All right, these things are the same. Bottom offset 2, trench width 3, vertical side height, let's do 5. Okay, so after 5 feet, we'll start sloping back in to tie into the surface. So what's new here is we now have a top backfill and a middle backfill. So say I knew at the top of my trench I wanted a foot of gravel, I can now define that. Okay? Before, we only had the 3 bottom ones. You couldn't define a top surface for that as the surface fluctuates. Let's still define some bottom ones. Say bedding 1 at foot and bedding 2, and I'm going to put this at 0.01, and I'll show why in a minute. And then a top, let's call it stone, of half a foot. Okay? So we have a bottom bedding, middle bedding defined, which is 0.01, and then stone at half a foot. Another new option is add pipe diameter to backfill thickness. Okay, I'm going to do that on 2. And you can see how 2 bumped up there. What this does is say I wanted a material always on top of the pipe, right on top of the pipe. What I can do is define a bedding, or define a material in between that's defined by the diameter of the pipe. So the diameter of the pipe right now is a foot, but as in this example, we have, it goes from 15 to 24. So as that pipe diameter increases, the bedding will increase the same amount, so that the stone is always going to be on top of that pipe. That's just something all new that we've added. Okay? And then, so what's really fluctuating is that these amounts are locked at the top, at the bottom. The stone is fixed. The middle bedding, bedding 2, is going to fluctuate as the pipe gets bigger or smaller. And then this middle here will fluctuate depending on how deep the trench is. So that's going to be our middle, or oops, this was gravel. That's going to be our middle backfill quantity, and we'll just call it fill.
Now, Todd, are there places when you're looking at, I know in some software packages, and I thought we had in the past,
yep,
where you could pick a manufacturer of certain materials, and then that would provide what their distance, what their dimensions were, because a lot of times you don't get, you're guessing. How do you nail that down? How are we sure that what we've got in there is accurate?
Yeah, you should always have some sort of template to go off of that has, you know, the materials called for on the job and those thicknesses. And that's really the best way to do it.
There are standards available by manufacturer, I believe.
Yeah, for a trench structure, you know, I can change a lot per job. So it's no real standard on a lot of the piping.
All right, so to create the trench,
yep,
in our package off of this file, what are the key elements that they got to make sure the PDF has provided for them to adequately create that trench?
They should have some sort of cross-section on there with the trench template information that shows them what is spec'd for on the job, the material and the thickness of that, and where it is on the trench.
Now, when
so there, you're basically rebuilding a view like this.
Okay. Now, did that come in under the PDF, or is this because you have knowledge based on your using the software?
Yeah, this is just an example. This isn't going off of any particular.
So when they ask the engineer for the PDF file, is this something they should be specific on? Does it automatically come in design when we're doing sewer layout for road work, or is it something omitted?
Yeah, it's something that they should get with, if you know they're doing any estimating or doing utility work, a trench, you know, what the trench is going to be for those utilities, is something that should be provided to them.
So once they get that, we can essentially not only create the trench, but we can size it to the exact design that we want it to be with all of the materials added, which you're filling in at the bottom there with whatever, maybe crushed gravel or so on and so forth. Or
right, yeah. So what this is going to do is give us complete volumes for the stone, bedding, gravel that we've defined here, a lot more sophisticated than just looking at the plan and estimating by the distance of the pipe, because the depth of the pipe is changing, so some of these materials are going to change depending on the depth and the width of the pipe.
I know some of the users have informed me that not only, as we've all learned in this industry, the cost of doing site work is how many trucks need to go in and how many trucks need to go out, and hopefully we don't have to move too much material. But also they like the fact that they can add in the subgrade materials and calculate that cost-related factor at the same time. That makes it a lot easier for them in billing the job, if you will.
Right. Yep. And so something else that we've added new to 2011 is that, for our cut fill volumes, we've always had a shrink and swell factor on those, on the cut and fill, and that's something that we've added here for the backfill quantities. So this is a multiplier. 1.05 would be, the shrink factor would be 5% on this. Let me save and exit. Okay, and let's look at a trench quantities report. So I'm going to have to build, let's see.
Now we've covered a lot of ground. There's a way of going back and seeing what we've done so far.
There's still a lot more that we've done, so I'm going to try to get through a couple more things.
Okay.
Load that
for questions too.
Yep, I'm going to load that trench and do it on all the trench line work. Okay. Let's see. Target surfaces, we haven't built an existing design surface on this. One option that we have is rim elevations. Okay, and this will give us a standard report. What's due in 2011 is that we have these new detailed reports. So for the structures, okay, let's bring all these over to view in a display. Okay, we now can have a nice report of all the structures, their coordinates, the rim, the invert out, and the depth and the width of those structures. And totals for that. The new report that I like and think will be very helpful is the depth details report. Let's do it on all structures. And for this, we're going to need a surface, I think. Unless, okay, let's do rim elevations, all trenches. Do rim elevation. Okay. So in this report here, I'm going to bring the material type to the top and pipe size to the top as well. Okay, and view the report for this. Now what we have is a report of both showing the pipe size, 24, and pipe material, and the depth and the linear footage of those pipe types at those materials. So 24-inch PCP, there's 100 feet of that between 0 and 5 feet deep. If I had 24-inch of concrete, I would see the length on that as well. So I can see the linear footage of all those things broken out. And let's just look at the standard report for this. This is what you typically get from the report. We have about 5 minutes left. Feel free to ask any questions on the right side with the chat. I am going to go over a bit and show a couple more features quickly on the on being able to take line work from 2D to 3D. We've changed that up a bit. So if you have the time, feel free to stay tuned. If you have to go, I understand. But if you have any questions at this time, feel free to write them on the side. Or you can call us. Yep.
When will we have? Do we have a number that we could give now? So is it on the web? Is it on our web yet? If they want to download a demo copy of this?
Yeah, it's supposed to be released later today. I don't think we have a serial number for that available yet, a demo. But feel free, if you're interested in looking at 2011, trying it out, feel free to give me a call or email, tcarlson@carlsonsw.com, and we'll be happy to, or John O'Brien. Email is up there as well.
One of the key things, if some of you haven't dealt with Carlson before, or have worked with Carlson but haven't dealt with the demo scenario, we take great pride in the fact that all of our demo products are not PowerPoint presentations and slanted this and that. It's the actual software that you're evaluating. We've actually had people who take our demo copy and go do a billable with it, which is fine with us. We like it to be taken through its rigors. So the difference between a demo and owning it is actually just the new serial number and a registration process. Other than that, you are test driving the exact product that you would be using. So it's not a matter of, well, does this look, will it look like what I tried out and like, or have to look at something else. So I think that's important. Also, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out when you become a user of Carlson products, I always like to tell people you learn us once. One of our greatest assets that we offer our user base is the fact that we give free tech support, and we have for as long as I've been with the company, going on 17 years. One of the major reasons we do that is because when we do our upgrades, we try to minimize the effect it has on the current user so that he or she is not looking all over the screen trying to find out what the procedures were that were very comfortable from them from learning the first time around. We kind of add on to that, not move it around, which minimizes your learning curve factor. So what you saw from Todd today, and once you test drive the software, that's your learning curve. You will find that any upgrades that occur after that will be minimal, and that's important for you to know, because it has an effect on people when they have to start over again, if you will, with it. So I'm just doing my sales thing, so bear with me on that. And but I think it's an important thing. It's proud that our company offers it, and I think it's an advantage to you if you become a user. And thank you.
Thank you, John. If you have the time to stay with us, just have about 15 more minutes of some features to show. For elevating line work on a contour line like this, okay? So you can see I have some elevated line work in here. The contour line's at 196. This is pads at 196, and this this curb line is at 0 elevation. We have two different sets of information. Let me turn off the existing contours. So we want to elevate this line work, and we have a contour line going through here and the label defining its elevation. Before, we would have to elevate by one process or the other, by either the contour line or the label to elevate it. Now the ability to do both of those at one time. Under elevate, okay, 2D to 3D, there's by text or by screen entities. Let's run by screen entities first. Okay, it says select objects to convert. I want to convert this curb line. Enter. Intersection tolerance, 0.1. So if it's within 1/10 of a foot of a contour line that I select, it will elevate it. That's fine for a tolerance. And select the 3D faces, lines, or polylines to elevate it by. So I could type in all and select all the contours. I'm just going to click on the 3 that are close by. Okay. So I have 3 contour lines here selected. I'm going to hit enter. Keep existing polyline. I'm going to say no. And change the layer. No, I don't need to. Okay, and it says converted 1 polyline. I go back to drawing inspector. Okay, 196. If I go over this line, you can see it says proposed face of curb is at 196. And it's interpolating this elevation to the 198 contour line. Another way to look at those elevations, should assign polyline elevations. I click on this line. Okay, I can see all the points on here. So anything that's checked is one that's been set by those contour lines. So 194, and I can go down. Here's 130. It shows me on the screen highlighted where that point is. And then all these points in between are interpolated. Okay. And one setting we have here is hide free points. If I look at those elevations, now we just have a list of the control points, and I can cycle through. Okay. But we don't want to use just those points. We also want to use these labels on here. Okay. In older versions of the software, if I were to run by text with leader now, it would override our elevations that we just set by the contour line. Now, what's new with 2011, this will add the elevations to that existing line, and they'll be locked in that other command. They'll be control points. So by text with leader, familiar with this command, select the text, select the leader line, polyline to convert. Okay, what to process, do a window, and do a window this way around these. Okay, got all my line work highlighted there that I want to use. Hit enter. Okay, add a value. No, I don't want to do that. Enter. Okay, remaking 2 polylines. So now I have it's using not only the contour lines, but these spot elevations in remaking that without losing the elevations from those lines. Okay, and I have a nice 3D line here. You can see this label is incorrect, 195, and this is 916. Those numbers are flipped. If I do edit assign polyline elevations now, and click on this line, okay, I can see those points, and I could remove 33 from the list here, and it will interpolate through that point. All right, so one of the new Elevate functionalities that we have is the ability to do 2 at a time. And the last one I'll show is an option. Let's first look at that surface. So let me say make design surface. And view the 3D drive for it. Oh, and we crashed. Okay.
Well, it doesn't take long to bring it back.
Yeah, let me close that. Let's see if it'll let me do it again. No. All right. This is still in beta, not released yet. I've got a couple of hours left to fix this. So I'm just going to quit out and go back in. 2011 with AutoCAD.
So the drive-through simulator needs to be tweaked.
I think it might be just using GoToMeeting. That viewer doesn't work. It should work when I go back into it here. Let's see if I'm right. No? All right. Something not working with that. Let's use the design surface. Okay. Use this viewer. Okay. We have our design. You can see those building pads in there, and the model for it. Okay. The pad's getting cut out there. And let's see if I can rotate this. Okay. Yep. So we got those building pads in there. We don't like this viewer as much as the other one. Okay. Basically, what's new in 2011 for these building pads, if I go to pad here, we have an option to use vertical from pad to surface. And what that will do is, say you have you're putting in your pads by the basement